Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the President of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, arrives in this country tomorrow for an official visit. He will be meeting the Prime Minister, among others. Now, if you need reminding as to who Sisi is, he is the man who was head of the Egyptian army when it overthrew the elected President Mohamed Morsi in 2013. He stood in a new election last year, one where he achieved 93% of the vote. While here, he won't be getting the sort of treatment given to Chinese presidents, but he will be taken seriously. And many people think he should not be granted that dignity. Nick Hopkins has been hearing from one of them.
I was very, very hopeful, like the millions of Egyptian youth who took part in the revolution. We wanted to see change, we wanted democracy, we wanted human rights, and we wanted an end to torture, to the endless abuses of human rights that were rampant under the Mubarak regime.
Sondos Assem was carried into government on the tide that swept aside Egypt's military ruler, Hosni Mubarak. She worked for the country's first elected president, the Muslim Brotherhood's Mohamed Morsi. That seems a long time ago now. Morsi is in jail. Sondos lives in the UK in exile. This is the only team she's part of now. A death sentence hangs over her. Punishment laid down under Egypt's new ruler, President Sisi, who will be David Cameron's guest at Downing Street this week.
It's a real shock to me and to Democrats in Egypt and to people who are the victims of the current military regime, to see that the British government and other Western governments are embracing the very same regime that is repressing them and torturing them on a daily basis. So you can only imagine the feeling of desperation and frustration which people who are now inside prison, undergoing all these forms of torture, would feel when they see that this man or this regime that is the cause of their suffering is actually embraced by so-called Western democratic countries.
This was 3 years ago. The youngest member of Morsi's government, Sondos Assem, acted as a press officer for the foreign media.
Well, let's first say that we are very happy.
A year later, Egypt's flirtation with democracy ended abruptly. The military was in charge again. And those who had supported the previous regime found themselves hunted down and jailed.
You can see now that most of the liberal, the secular, the leftist and the Islamist activists who were publicly involved during the revolution are now either in jail, are exiled, or have been killed. So I don't think Egypt now is a safe place for any Democrat or for anyone who opposes the current military regime.
She fled Egypt in fear and won a scholarship at Oxford University. But during her exams this summer, any hope she had of returning home disappeared.
I was utterly shocked by the news of this death sentence. The charges are ludicrous, you know. In the same case, there are 35 defendants. They are accused of espionage with a range of foreign entities to destabilize the country. So it's basically people are accused of a grand conspiracy to overthrow the regime, to destabilize Egypt.
The crowds that greeted the fall of Morsi felt he behaved no better than the authoritarian regime before him. But there are those here who fear General Sisi is guilty of widespread abuses and that David Cameron shouldn't have invited him.
I actually regret that he's been invited. To actually put out the carpet for him, to invite him in the way that he's being invited, in a way becomes celebratory for Sisi. That will be how it would be presented in the media back in Egypt, that he's being greeted and warmly embraced by Britain. And that's not good enough. He has thrown into prison thousands of peaceful demonstrators. He has corrupted the legal system. We've seen the passing of the death penalty on well over 1,000 people. simply because they were members of the party that was previously in government.
I think it's very painful for me and for anyone who can't go back to their country. You know, I was born and raised in Egypt. It's my country which I cherish, and it is a real shock to me to be accused of such serious charges and to be handed down a death penalty by the judiciary, by the Egyptian judiciary, and to be demonized in Egyptian media.
President Morsi was tried and now faces death. Sondos Assem knows a similar fate awaits her in Sisi's Egypt.
Nick Hopkins reporting there. We're going to hear from Nick again now, because the government brings its investigatory powers bill before Parliament tomorrow. It is the legislative attempt to define the boundary between our right to privacy and the state's right to snoop, between freedom and national security. These issues divide people. To some extent, it depends which danger you fear most. But it is the issue that defines our time. Nick Hopkins is something of a specialist in this area. So, Nick, it is a moment with Tory majority government bringing this bill to Parliament. What can we expect?
Well, the message from government over the last few days has been that the most contentious issues that were in what was called the Snoopers Charter have been abandoned. Now, I think that's partly true, but not completely true. I don't think anyone should be under any illusions that under this draft bill, the police and the intelligence agencies will have access to a vast amount of our personal information. Without a warrant, they will be able to see who you've emailed, they'll be able to see who you've called, they'll be able to see which websites you have looked at. Now, if they want to go a step further, if they actually want to listen to your phone calls, if they want to read your emails, if they want more details of your web browsing history, that will require a warrant. And under the current regime, that means a sign-off from the Home Secretary if you're the police or MI5.
Right. I mean, in practice, because that sounds quite a lot, really, without a warrant they can go and search through who I've been calling. In practice, what does all this mean?
Well, the law will require telecoms companies in Britain to store this information that they have about us for 12 months. Now, what I understand is that the Home Office actually wants to take this a step further. It wants to be able to link all the different databases from all these different companies, and that will make it easier for the police to search them. Now, if you're a detective, this is great news. It'll speed up your inquiries. If you're a privacy campaigner, however, you're thinking, well, isn't the government in danger here of creating a giant new state-controlled database? And they'll be looking for reassurances from the bill that there is proper oversight.
Nick, thanks. The debate starts tomorrow.
It does.
I've been getting away with it all my